Hello and welcome to another knitting pod. I am Lena and this is a space where we chat about all things knitting. Let's jump right in, okay? We've got so much to talk about. Last time I was with you guys, it was before Mother's Day, and now we are post Mother's Day. If you are a mother, if you celebrated Mother's Day, I hope it was perfect. I hope you felt loved and that you gave yourself the love and whatever it is that you need, because everybody's so different. Like, to somebody, going outside and hiking is the perfect day, and for someone else, lying in bed and doing nothing is the perfect day. So I hope you had your perfect day. I know I had a lovely one. The weather was just my dream weather for spring, which is stormy and cool. So I got to spend the morning in my pajamas and on the patio and knitting in the beautiful weather. And I didn't do a single thing in the kitchen, and that is my personal win. So I had a lovely one. And as promised, there was a Mother's Day cast on, and nothing ever goes as planned, right? Like, you can think you have everything squared away and you know exactly what's going to happen. And that is really not how my Mother's Day cast on panned out. I was toggling between the Inclinations shawl by Andrea Mowry and the Nightshift shawl by Andrea Mowry. Last time I had told you guys I had 3 skeins of Spincycle from a trip that I took in February, and I was going to use those 3 and then purchase 3 more. So I will show you the 3 that I had. Let's see if I can even remember which were the original 3. But I will tell you that when I was picking the colors that I wanted to go with the 3 I had, in my mind, I was fairly certain that it was going to be the Nightshift shawl. I just love the look of it, and I love the simplicity of it. Allows the Spincycle to just really, really shine. And I love how the entire thing is interplay between 2 different colorways of Spincycle. I finished the Traveler shawl and I had made it in one colorway, and it was an absolute joy, but I was really looking forward to watching 2 colors interplay in this shawl. So I had really decided Nightshift was the way I was going to go. So because in the Nightshift shawl, there's one background color and then there's mosaic blips in the foreground, I personally was looking for contrast between those 2 colors. And so that kind of informed my picking of my yarn. So let me show you the colors I have. I had originally had Truth Bomb, which you guys know how much I love. It's like gorgeous shades of green and lime and blue and brown. And it's been one of my favorites for a long time. So I was very keen on getting that. I also have Salty Dog, which is much more tonal in, very warm fall kind of mustardy colors, which I love. And then, hang on, all my yarn here is kind of in a hot mess. This is Ghost Ranch. It's almost unrecognizable because I've made my way through a lot of it, but we're in some dark, moody, midnight colors. And I'm telling you guys, the joy of Spincycle is if you get one of these very color shifting skeins, like this is not super color shifting. It's got lots of tones, but Ghost Ranch is one of those really special colorways that just has so much going on that it is just like Christmas every time you're knitting with it because you don't know what's coming. Anyway, those were the 3 originals that I had. And then the 3 additions that I bought are Shades of Earth. And oh my gosh, when I look at it like this, it reminds me of a geode, where you have the round rock and then you break it and the inside is just like so different and fun. And that's how I feel about this. I love this colorway. This was a very easy choice for me because I wanted something deep and rich and yet has some interesting color in it. And I thought this one was fantastic and it did not disappoint. The other one I got, and I feel so strongly about this one too, Melancholia. Oh, y'all, again, really rich, even richer than a jewel tone to me. I don't know. I think it's because it has a lot of this kind of really deep maroony plum plied throughout. It just has so much richness, and these two together I think are just epic. Then the final one that was really hard to pick was this one. This is Deep Bump. I was really conflicted. I almost did Stay Out of the Forest, which was really orange, but then I thought I wanted something a little more contrasty. Then I almost did Miss Me, and then I didn't think that went so well. And so finally I settled on Deep Bump. This one does not give me like that feeling that these two give me, the other two give me, but I think it's really pretty when you're working it up. It provides a nice kind of stability for a more color changing skein. So I have so much in my head. I'm trying to like make sure it's coming out in an organized way. I bought mine at Websters, the Websters yarn store. I don't really know where they're based actually. However, they have an incredible variety of Spincycle, and what I really, really appreciated about them was if you email their customer service and tell them the colors that you're looking for. So for instance, I am looking for shades of earth. I would like a skein with as much purple as possible. I sent them an email like that about all these different colors I wanted. And she, within like an hour, had sent me photographs with 5 different skeins numbered 1 through 5 in order for me to pick whatever I wanted that fit my description. And then I could pick and I could see in that picture how those skeins would interplay. You guys, I mean, when it comes to Spincycle, there's just such a wide variety. I'm going to put a picture up of the colorway Vibe Check. And it is like 5 or 6 skeins. And you can see just this one colorway, how much variation there is within that color. So if you want a lot of lime, that would be very disappointing if you got one with like a ton of pink. So the fact that Websters will do that, I think makes it just like the second best thing to picking out in person. Obviously, picking yarn in person is just far above and beyond the number one choice. But if you can't, because Spincycle is not available everywhere, like the closest to me is in Denver, and I'm not going to drive to downtown Denver to. I mean, if I was already in Denver, I would definitely stop by Fancy Tiger Crafts, and they used to carry Spincycle. I don't know if they do anymore, but I just wanted to shout out Websters, and I know a lot of you love Spincycle as much as I do, so please use them because they just do such a great job and have such a wide selection. Anyway, okay, so let me show you. So these are the deeper kind of jewel tones. Ghost Ranch, forgive Ghost Ranch for being almost gone. And then these are like, you know, brighter, lighter colors. This one is sort of the oddball in this situation, but I'm okay with that because I don't want it to just be so predictable. Okay, so I showed you all the yarn. Now, on Mother's Day, I was in bed and I was too lazy to print out the Nightshift pattern. So I was like, you know what? I've knit this before. I'm just going to cast it on and use my screen. That just really did not work for me. I don't know what was happening, but I kept on messing up within the first like 15 rows. Like something would go wrong and I'd get like, wait, what row am I on? I was just having such a hard time keeping track of my place in the pattern, and it just kept throwing me off. And then, you know, my husband would come in and say something, or my daughter would come and say something, and then I would lose track. And I wasn't using like a knitting app. I was just using it on the screen. So I was trying to remember what row I was on, and it kept going wrong. So I was like, you know what? I feel like this is a sign that I should do what I told you guys I was going to do and swatch for both, like try at the beginning of the Inclinations and the Nightshift. So I thought, perfect. I grabbed some more Spincycle and I cast on the Inclinations. Oh my gosh, what a pleasant surprise. It really was much, it had, it, for lack of a better way to say this, it felt like it had so much personality that wasn't coming across on a screen, like in the pictures. And so then I found myself at just a complete conundrum because the Nightshift had like 3 pros and the Inclinations had 3 pros. For instance, I thought the Inclination shawl, the texture that happens in the half fisherman's rib is unbelievable. And it's so much simpler than brioche, but it gives a very similar texture. You are just knitting in a row below. And it's just that one drop stitch creates so much more fabric, I guess, or I really don't know what the mechanism is, but I was blown away. I mean, brioche takes so much more work, and I felt like cheating, and you get a very similar, beautiful result. So to me, the Inclinations just had a total win on the texture and the squishiness. Like I just wanted to wrap myself up in the half fisherman's rib. Like it had that like bouncy, just like squish factor. If you know, you know. But on the other hand, the Nightshift shawl has this look. Aesthetically, I liked it more, even though it was a flatter, not as squishy fabric. The mosaic knitting and the way the yarn interplays is just, it is more beautiful to me to look at than the Inclinations shawl. However, and I shouldn't say however, and the Nightshift has a shape that I appreciate so much more. It is like a more symmetrical, I don't think it's 100% symmetrical, but it's a very symmetrical triangle shawl. So there's more depth and there's not as much wingspan. The Inclination shawl is a very asymmetrical triangle in which one of the wings is much longer and pointier. And I just don't love that because I am not very tall. And in shawls like that, I found that when I just drape it around my shoulders, it almost feels like it's too long and it kind of looks silly. Like, so I feel like I don't get as much use out of those shawls. And then finally, the problem was also that I had picked yarn colors that I thought would shine in the Nightshift shawl. And that didn't necessarily translate in my mind to the Inclinations because the way the Inclinations is structured is that it's alternating rows in the, so one row back and forth in one colorway and the next one in the other. So the colors are much more blended. And her intention was for her sample, she did a fade. So she did like light, medium, dark blue, light, medium, deeper orange, and she faded them. And I really liked that look. Whereas I just couldn't, there was no order in which my yarns would be faded. And the transitions in my mind were going to be too jarring. And I wanted, if I'm going to do an Inclinations, I want it to be more blended to give a different look. And I would have picked yarn in a completely different way with a completely different mindset as to the end result. So at the end of the day, it literally was like back and forth. I kept swatching, ripping out, trying like different color combinations. And honestly, it was so much fun, but it wasn't until 2 days ago, so a few days after Mother's Day, that I actually started my shawl and committed to the Nightshift. And the last thing I will say, I was kind of cracking myself up. I was so obsessed with the texture of the Inclinations and I was willing to overlook my color issues if I could tweak the pattern in a way that it would be a more symmetrical, deep triangle rather than this kind of oddly shaped long wing triangle. So I had it all figured out, but then I realized that the actual pattern for half fisherman's rib, as you increase, in order to keep the pattern going, you have to increase 2 stitches at a time rather than 1 stitch at a time like in the Nightshift. So the reason she picked that shawl shape is because that's just necessary to keep the pattern going. So sometimes we try to outsmart a designer and then it doesn't actually work. But luckily, I figured that out, and it was a really fun exercise kind of for me in understanding design choices, and especially for someone as talented as Andrea Mowry, who I think is such a great designer, and she does such a good job of thinking everything out, that it was kind of like a little window into a design choice that is functional and how it, impacts the final result. So anyway, that was all the backstory to my Nightshift shawl. So now I'm going to show you my beautiful Nightshift in a process. It's sort of curling at the ends. I hope that that is something that gets fixed, and I'm sure it will. Here it is. I don't know what the best way, maybe this way. This is it. Right now I'm in the background color is Ghost Ranch. I started out, I had like a third or a quarter of a skein left of the colorway Love Spell. And just to experiment while I was swatching, I swatched Love Spell with Ghost Ranch, and I ended up thinking it looked incredible. Like if you had asked me, I would have been like, oh, that's a terrible combination because they're so tonally different. But oh my goodness, I love it so much. I love the beginning of this so much because the Love Spell is so bright and the colors are very, they're pastel, but they're a very bright tone. They just stand out in a really gorgeous way against the moody, deep colors in Ghost Ranch. And this is what I was saying. Like, look at this background of Ghost Ranch, like how it so smoothly transitions from these golds and yellows to maroon to lighter, salmon colors to this blue. They do such an incredible job. I don't know how they do it. And I have started spinning, but I still don't know how they do such a great job of blending the colors. Anyway, I think it's magical. Here's just a little last bits of Love Spell when it's in a very pink and yellow section. I'm saving this so that it shows up later in the shawl. Also, I didn't want it just to be at the beginning. I'll work it in somewhere else and finish this up. She says in the notes that this shawl takes up a ton of yarn. Like she used every single bit of her spin cycle, and that's music to my ears. I hate leftovers because leftovers beget more yarn. Because say you have a quarter of a skein you want to use, it's so rare that that's enough for the next thing you're going to do. So then you buy a little bit more and then you never get to zero. So I will be finishing this shawl until there is not a scrap left. And so I used Love Spell at the beginning. Then I transitioned for the blips into Deep Bump because I thought it would look like a smooth transition. I want to make it as blendy as possible. There's going to be some more jarring changes, but I really like the blendiness. I think if you are like me and you like a blended, like a very smooth look, one option is to make the background color just one colorway that has a lot of color changes in it. So it'll be interesting, but it'll be a very smooth background. For instance, Ghost Ranch. It's my favorite colorway of all time. And I would totally have done an entire Ghost Ranch background if I hadn't done an entire Ghost Ranch Traveler's shawl. I wanted these to be very different. And I think that Ghost Ranch, Melancholia, and Shades of Earth they have enough tonal overlap that it'll look nice and blendy. These are mainly what I'm gonna do for the background. My daughter, she lights up as much as I do when we talk about spin cycles. So one of our favorite things to do is talk about colorways, and we look at all the colorways online. And she was saying how she feels like it's almost like a 6 degrees of separation. Like every single colorway of spin cycle yarns has some commonality with another one. Like you can find some tone in every single skein that is shared. I think that would be a fun hypothesis to dive into. But I'm hoping that she's right and these all go together really well. This, if I were to do an inclination shawl at some point, number one, I think it would be a fantastic handspun project because I think it would allow you to play with a lot of color. And if you're like me and you love color, that would be just awesome. But if I were to make it in Spincycle, my dream is to use tones like this for 3. So Melancholia being maybe the darkest or the middle, and find 2 others that are a nice fade with this. And then use something brighter like Valley Girl and a couple of other purpley pink skeins that have more brightness. And I think that would just be, oh my gosh, I'll put a picture of Valley Girl because it is such a fun, pretty colorway. And I think for me, if I knit it with some deep and moody colors, I think it would just pop and it would be spectacular. So don't fret if you were voting for Inclinations. It was like Nightshift won by a hair. If it hadn't been for the shaping, Nightshift would have won. And I think I just needed to follow my initial instinct, because my initial instinct was that I wanted to play with color in that mosaic way rather than that more blendy way. So anyway, that was a very long story, but there are no short stories around here. I love this. It's going by so fast. It's so easy to memorize the stitch pattern, and we are going out of town this weekend. We're headed back to Texas. My nephew is graduating high school. So I feel like this is the perfect travel project, even though there will be multiple skeins. It's a short trip. I won't have to take it all, and I'm really looking forward to making progress. It's one of those just one more row projects because you just can't wait to see the colors change and interplay. It's like double the fun. So I know a bazillion of you have probably already made this, but I love it so much. It's fabulous. It is so much fun. I'm going to make some annoying crinkly sounds and put some of this yarn away because I have so much stuff here on this couch next to me to show you that it's kind of annoying me. I don't like clutter and chaos, and there's clutter and chaos on this couch. Let's see. I'm just gonna put this all over here. So I know some of you were like, let's do a knit along, and I would love nothing more than to knit along with you guys. Like, that makes me so happy, but I am an irresponsible knit along guide, so it just has to be something that's like super informal. I just cannot get myself to be disciplined about Instagram and stuff. So if we're gonna knit the Nightshift shawl together, you have to send me a message or leave it in the comments and keep giving me updates, because that would make me so happy. Okay, what else? I have to tell you guys that I have not touched the sweater I've been knitting, the Shizen by Eri Shimizu. I didn't even bring it over here because I haven't looked at it since a minute ago, because I've just been so deeply into color recently because, my son has been traveling so much and he's been gone so much. I've seen him between trips. I think I saw him for 30 minutes before he went to bed, and then 30 minutes in the next morning before he left. So he's just been gone so much. He's coming back finally this afternoon, and he's home for a month before he has to travel again. So I'm so excited, but the emptiness that I feel when he's gone, it's like the only thing that was going to keep me distracted enough not to cry is working with color and being just lost in my own world of Spincycle. If he were a color, he'd be like neon chartreuse green. He's like this really effervescent, happy, funny person. So he just gives me so much energy in my life. He's never in a bad mood. He's always around. He doesn't do his homework upstairs. He just always is around. And so when he's gone, I'm not going to be knitting a gray sweater. It's just, I don't need any more things to just make me feel. I need neon and happiness to lift my spirits until he comes back. So I'm very excited, you guys. I know we don't usually talk about family stuff till the end, but I had to explain why I have not worked on anything not colorful. So what I did work on a little bit, mostly this, but what I also worked on was my Bubbles and Brioche shawl. I cannot believe how fast this shawl is going by, considering the fact that it is a fingering weight shawl with 2 brioche panels. I am so just zooming along, you guys. I finished the brioche section. I wish this was an interactive podcast and you could reach through the screen and squish this section because it's glorious. It's brioche, so it's double thick, and this grayish dark gray color is alpaca, and it's a little bit thicker, so it just has this beautiful body to it, and I enjoyed every stitch of the brioche section. We talked about this last week, so if you want to hear more about the brioche section, please go watch last week's episode if you haven't already. But I finished that brioche section and I started these very long bubble sections. I'm so scared the little stoppers are going to fly off and I'm going to lose stitches. And there's so many slippery little stitches. I don't want to lose them. So I have just finished the 4th bubble row. So there's 4 more and then it's the bind off. And I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. Somehow in my mind, I thought there was another brioche or garter section after that, but there's not. So I really, although these rows are super long, I feel like I'm going to finish this shawl so soon. I love it so much. I love it more than I thought I would. Like it was sort of had let's enjoy some stash yarn energy, but it has turned into something that's bringing me an immense amount of joy. An immense amount of joy. I talked about it last week, so I won't go on and on, but I can't tell you how much I love this. It's funny because I have made, the first thing I ever made was the bubble cowl, and then I made the bubble cardigan, and now I'm making this bubble shawl. So I am just such a fan of this bubble stitch because it's incredibly cool looking. I just think it has such a fun look, and I mean, how could you not be into that? I just love it so much. So I took a beat, and one afternoon, instead of just working on it, I wove in all my ends because obviously there's a lot going on here and there's a lot of ends. I do the weave and Steven where when I change colors as much as humanly possible, I weave in the ends as I go. And even though that slows you down in the moment, it is just a lifesaver at the end of the day. Because if I didn't do that, the weaving in of the ends would be interminable. So try to weave in as you go. And I was just telling my cousin this, like, take a minute mid-project and clean up your ends. It'll make you feel so much more excited about the project just because it looks more appealing than all this crazy shag everywhere. And it just saves you at the end when you're just so excited to be done, then you have another step. So to me, I like to pause, weave in some ends, snip them, give them a good haircut, and then keep moving forward. It'll give you like a little extra boost. Like, you know, when you were playing Pac-Man and you get the little boost and it gets bright and it starts going faster, that's what will happen to you if you weave in your ends in the middle. So that is my advice. Love it. Just cannot stop, won't stop loving it. I cannot wait to wear it because it's just so happy and fun and graphic and impactful. Like, to me, just a white tank top, jeans, and this would just be the cutest outfit ever. And when I say jeans, I mean leggings because I am the equivalent of a baby and I don't like things that are too like buttons and zippers. I like I like soft things. I really think that's half of my love of knitting is it's like art, but it's soft and cuddly. And that's like my whole vibe is like Stephen West says, wearable art. It's true, especially with Stephen West. So that is that. What else is on my radar? Let me pull up my notes because I get so excited by what I'm talking about that I forget what else I was supposed to talk about. Let's see. Okay, let me show you a little bit of some of the yarn I've spun because there's a pattern that came out that I really think is going to be my first hand spun, although I'm in two minds about this. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the two minds. Okay, first of all, I don't know what to show you first. Would you like to see my very first completed skein of yarn ever? It was the first that I spun the singles, I plied the singles, I washed them, I finished it, and it is here in all its imperfect glory. I'm gonna try to undo this real quick. Show you the best way to show you. This is it. This is my very first skein. Like you can see the variation in the thickness of the plies because I am an absolute embryo knitter, not even a baby knitter, spinner. But I'm happy with it. I feel like it's fairly balanced, like it's not twisting. I think it's beautiful. It makes me very happy. It was so funny. My friend, one of my really good friends, was over when I was kind of pulling it out of the bath and it was wet and I was just going on and I was like, oh my God, have you ever seen anything more beautiful than this? I'm so proud of it. I was just elated. And she was like, you know what? I love you and I know how talented of a knitter you are, but to me that looks like a wet mop. I thought it was so funny because to us, like yarn and fiber and these kinds of things are just so exciting and we'd get so worked up and we could talk about it all day. But to someone who doesn't know, it's like, what in the world are you raving about? Like you literally look like you're wringing out a mop. So here's my first mop completed. I need to wind it into a skein so that it doesn't look so fraggly. That's a technical spinning term, fraggly. But yeah, I don't know if I'm going to use this. If I do, it'll be in the project I'm about to tell you about. Now, I have two more skeins that I finished. These are better than that one in that I feel like I was able, at least to some extent, to find a little more consistency in the width, but it's still not great. And there are two because I think something happened and I wanted to split it into two, but I really am glad I did because this was my first one. And when I was done with it and it was hanging, it was twisting a lot. So it was clear to me that it was not a balanced yarn, meaning there wasn't the same amount of twist in the ply as there was like in the single as there was in the ply. So it made me realize, okay, when I'm plying it together, I had to figure out, was I overplying or underplying? And I think I was overplying. I found, there's so much information on the internet, thank goodness. But what's funny is as this has hung over the last few days, that twist is really gone. Like now it is actually pretty straight. So I don't know. Does it, as it rests, does it chill out and like balance itself out, which would be so cool. Self-correcting yarn, amazing. So this one, I felt like I tried to underply it a little bit, but then there's a third version of this. All of it came from the same two plies, but there's a third version that I tried to ply even less. So what I do as a beginner is while I'm plying, I count the number of treadles. It's also really relaxing and therapeutic. So this one was like 8 before I fed it in. And the one that's in the bath right now was 6. So I'm going to see if I like that one better. I don't know. It's all a learning process and it's all really, really fun. I'm having a blast working on getting better at spinning. I love how much there is to learn, and I'm not putting any pressure on myself for it to be perfect. I think you can just enjoy it as an art of its own. Like I said last week, that was a really helpful frame of mind for me. So here's the deal. There's 2 projects right now that are on my mind. Well, that's a joke. There's a lot more on my mind, but these are the 2 that I'm thinking about with regards to my handspun. Number 1 is the Traveler hat that Andrea Mowry just released. You guys, I love that hat. I love hats. You guys know that's my go-to small project. I love hand knit hats. They're fun to make. They're short, instant gratification. I wear them all the time when it's cooler outside. And I love the Traveler series. I think the Traveler series, now there's like a cowl, a shawl, a sweater, a hoodie, a short sleeve like jacket thing. There's a million, and I'm here for it. I love them all. It's like the shift. It's like sometimes she just nails it on a stitch pattern, and then I'm like so happy there's a million versions of it. What I really like about the hat is that the shaping is so different. It's not just a predictable hat shape. It has almost like a squareness. My cousin and I were chit-chatting about it, and she was like, does it have like a kitty cat ears kind of vibe? And I thought maybe it does, but I actually really like it. I like my hats to have a little volume at the top because I have a very long face, and if I don't want to look like a cone head. So to me, if the hat has a little more width, I feel like it balances out my head a little bit more, a little bit better. So I love that hat also because I bought it and it has, I think 5 or 6 sizes, and you can make it in fingering weight all the way to worsted weight. So I love that. It gives you options. It gives you options for what do you want it to look like? Do you want it to have more of like a chunky, those ridges to be chunky, or do you want them to be more delicate? I thought that it might be really pretty in this, and I like the idea of this colorway. It's neutrals, but interesting, kind of fun neutrals, and I think it's a color combo that I would wear in the winter because it's neutral enough. Sometimes I'll knit like a really bright hat, and then I find it's kind of hard to make it work with my clothes. So I feel like this would work with a lot of things for me. And it would give me a chance to see how this yarn is gonna knit up, if it actually is balanced. And I think the stitch pattern in the Traveler, because it's not stockinette, is going to be a lot more forgiving. I think stockinette is probably the least forgiving in terms of imperfect handspun. But so yeah, that's one idea, is the Traveler hat by Andrea Mowry. The other thing that I've really had in my heart for a long time is I want to make another Pengweeno jacket by Stephen West. It's been around for a long time. I've knit one. I knit one for my daughter. So there's the Pengwono, which is the adult sizes, and then there's the Pengweeno, which is for the kid sizes. Now, everybody knows, if you know this pattern, that the Pengwono is an extremely oversized garment, and I think one problem a lot of people have with it is it's just enormous. Like, it takes a specific kind of person to pull that like huge oversized statement off. And I think it can just feel like too much fabric. Anyway, I agreed because I made one for my daughter in the 8 to 10-year-old size, and it fits me perfectly. I love the way it fits. It's boxy and oversized, but not in a way that's like I feel clownish. And I've been wanting to make one officially for myself in neutral colors, because that one was really bright for her, but I've been wanting to make it in neutral colors. And I've really felt like using my handspun would be really fun. I could pick neutral colors like this, but in an interesting way, because it's a modular knit. So you get you could use as many colors or as few colors as you want and kind of just make it your own completely. And I thought it would be fun to use all this, handspun yarn and try to make a Pengweeno in whatever colors I'm feeling and in my handspun, and it would just be so special. So those are the two things on my radar in terms of using my handspun. Like, I don't know if I'll use this just because I love these colors. I think they're super duper fun, and I think that'll be really fun to knit them up, but I just don't know if I'd want an entire Pengweeno in this color palette. I just don't know. This was really just practice. I don't know what I would make with this, but I want to make something. I don't want it to just squander, because I really want to see how it knits up, and I want something to memorialize my very first full finished skein of yarn. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'm thinking if I do it in these, then maybe I'd use this brown color as the common element in every skein, and maybe ply it with different colors so that it'd be interesting, but I'd still stay in the browns and kind of golds color family, maybe with some pops of color here and there. But I love browns. Browns are my neutral of choice. I do not wear black very much, if at all. I think maybe, number one, it's boring for me personally. Also, when you have really dark black hair like I do, it's just too much. It's like too much of one color, and that also being black, it's just too, I don't know. That's how I feel. So I prefer browns as my neutral, and I think that'd be fun. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you've made out of your handspun. I know there's a lot of shawls out there that would be great with handspun yarn, but I'm still like this. I just started spinning another ply this morning, and I'm trying really, really hard to spin it really thin, because I really want to make a fingering weight yarn. I want to be able to consistently make a fingering or sport weight yarn so that I can use that hedgehog fibers in that way. I feel like this is still too thick. I haven't experimented with what weight this is, but it feels thicker. Definitely feels more like at least sport plus, not fingering weight, even though that was what I was going for. It's just so hard to stay consistent while you're spinning. It's such a skill. And then when I look at other people's handspun, I'm always just so impressed with the consistency. It's really hard. Anyway, all right, what else? That, I believe, is all the knitting content, knitting and spinning content. Let me just check. Yeah. I mean, I've been talking for 45 minutes, so that's a lot of knitting and spinning content. I hope that you had fun catching up with me on what I've been working on. I would love to know if you guys cast on something for Mother's Day. Please let me know in the comments below. I would love to know. Moving on to books, I just was so excited to talk to you about this book this week. So last week, I believe it was, Oprah picked a book club pick. And if you have hung out with me before, you know I love Oprah so much. So much. I mean, I just love Oprah. And if she picks a book, it's very high likelihood that I read it. So she had picked the book Long Island by Colm Toibin. And it was a follow-up to his not his first book, I don't think, but a book he had written a good number of years ago called Brooklyn. And I honestly am not sure if I read Brooklyn years and years ago. I think it was like circa 2010, which would put me in toddlerhood for my son. So I don't know if I read it, but I had the book. but I had no recollection of reading it. So I think what happened was I did not read it. I think it just didn't keep my interest and I never read it. Which is so ironic because now I really wanted to read Long Island, but even though Oprah said you don't have to have read Brooklyn to really get Long Island, there's no way I'd ever do that. I'm not someone, if there's a part one, I am going to read the part one. I'm not going to jump to the second part of the story. So I was like, you know what? Let me see if it's on Libby. So Brooklyn was on Libby. I downloaded the audiobook. You guys, it's so comical to me that I had it and didn't read it 10 or 15 years ago because I loved it so incredibly much. I found it to just hit me so deeply in my soul. And it just goes to show that our evolution as people, our growth, our maturity, our life experience, as we get older, gives us so much more ability to appreciate art and each other and the stories in this world. It's like, that's why I love getting older. I feel like I have so much more understanding or ability to understand and be touched in that way. And this book, next level. It's the kind of book that ruins the other books you're reading. So I am also reading at this concurrently Family by Lori Frankel. And I told you guys last week that I was really loving it. Well, once I became obsessed with Brooklyn, I just couldn't even listen to Family because it just felt so absurd and superfluous and almost, it just doesn't have that depth and weightiness. I might just have to put it on the back burner because this isn't the moment for me to read that. So anyway, I'd be curious to know if you've read it since it's been out for so long, Brooklyn, that is. So I finished Brooklyn and then I immediately bought Long Island, even though I should finish the other books I was reading, but I just couldn't resist being right back in that world. And what's amazing is that so rarely, so rarely, I would say never, do I read something that affects me so deeply and feels so just like I have internalized that world into my own heart. And then the minute you finish it, the sequel or the second part of the story is out and you get to just read that. It's too good to be true. So I felt like it was just a gift from the reading gods that I had this deep connection to Brooklyn, and then I could just turn around and start Long Island. So I am enjoying that very much. I am not going to say anything about either book because I loved just having that book unfold for me without knowing anything about it. I loved it so much. I don't want to say a word about it if you want to read it. I don't think everybody would love this book as much as I do. I think it's a very quiet book. It's not fireworks and big things happening. It's just one of those books. The reason it is so good is it elevates just everyday life into art and it makes you just feel very deeply. I thought it was on the same lines as if you like Elizabeth Strout and you liked Olive Kittredge, I think you would love this book. If you like Jhumpa Lahiri and you loved Unaccustomed Earth and The Namesake and some of her other short story collections, you will love Colm Toibin. But if you're not into that kind of reading, then I don't think you would particularly love this book. It gave me the sense of, my parents immigrated to the United States in the 1970s when they were in their early 20s. And this book just made me feel so much understanding for their experience in a new way. And I think that's what literature does. It makes us able to kind of put a new lens on the actual experiences in our own lives and in our own histories. I just don't think I could have appreciated fully without reading this book. I don't know. I don't want to just keep rambling on and on, but I just felt like it was so beautiful, and it landed so squarely in my heart. And there's a movie that was made, and I put it on last night to see if I'd like it. And I had to turn it off because the book was so perfect, and like my experience and my own imagination was so specific and vivid that seeing it, even it was beautifully done as a movie. I didn't want to complicate what was in my mind. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't want it to change the pictures in my mind with the pictures on the screen. So I didn't watch the movie. I'm reading Long Island, and it's just a glorious experience. So I'm so happy to share that with you, because I hope at least one of you finds as much connection to that story as I did. Like I said, the other books I'm reading just are on the back burner right now. I'm still hoping to finish that Lori Frankel book. I do want to say that her other book that I was talking about, This Is How It Always is heads and shoulders above this one. So if you had the opportunity to read one of those, I would pick This Is How It Always Is. I loved that book. And then I'm also trying to read the Alice Network, but I haven't touched that. It's kind of on the back burner. But I was okay with that because I was at a point where, like, I have fully absorbed the story to a certain point, and now it's kind of a nice place to pause, and I'll rejoin it. I'll definitely finish it because I do enjoy that book. So that is that. As far as TV, there is like not one show out there right now that I am obsessed with, which is such a bummer. I think we're going to watch Hacks. I don't know if you watched the first 2 seasons of that show. I loved them. I loved that show. And the actress, Jean Smart, is unbelievable. I love her in everything she's ever done. She was in Designing Women when I was young, like in high school. I loved Designing Women so much. And then she was on Frasier as Frasier's high school crush and later girlfriend. And anyway, I love her, and I love her in Hacks, and you should totally watch it. I believe she's a comedian in that show. It's been several years since I watched the first 2 seasons, but I just remember loving it, and I can't wait to watch the third. So that is my entertainment report of the week. Like I said, I'm just counting the seconds till my son comes back today. He's on the bus right now. So his last trips have been for basketball, but this was a school trip. They went camping in Moab. So he's just exhausted. I think he's like just at his limit of what more he can take, which is insane because he comes back today, and then Sunday we leave to go to Texas. So he has like 1.5 days at home, but I know he just wants to sleep in his bed, and I think he's kind of done sharing space. Like, he's been sharing a room with people on the trips, and the tent he's been sharing with 3 or 4 people. And so I know he's just ready to have like a beat where he can like shower and have his own space. And I cannot wait to have that boy back in my space. I am done with space from him. I just want him to fill up my house. Like, I always joke, I call him Chirpy Bird, because he talks. He's like constantly a flow of words coming out of his mouth. And whenever we walk the dogs in springtime, there's just all these birds out, just cheep, 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 cheep. And I'm like, I can't wait till my Chirpy Bird comes back, because I miss that background noise of all his little nuggets that he's always talking about. But anyway, I cannot wait till he's back. I'm just so excited. This week has dragged so hard because he hasn't been here. So he gets back in the afternoon. We're going to have a family dinner. We're going to make his favorite food and just soak up being together as a family again. So that is what's on my agenda. And then we go to Texas for like the shortest trip ever, but I'm really looking forward to seeing my family. And then we're back and summer starts. This is how crazy life has been, is that I didn't even mention that school's out next week. I don't know if I'm ready, but it doesn't really matter because it's going to happen. Like, I'm ready. I feel like we're all ready to be done with this school year, but then the summer is just like a constant shifting sands. Like, one week the schedule is this way and one week the schedule is different. It's a little crazy, but you just have to get in the right mindset and not be too, how to say this, like, just not get too attached to any certain schedule. Like, I'm a very schedule oriented person, so I've always struggled with the summer, but this year I'm just going to try to chill and go with the flow and let it be, and like accept the chaos and find joy in the chaos, because it's not forever. And once it's done, it's never going to be like that again. So I'm going to try to enjoy it. So that is where my life stands. I know a lot of you guys on the East Coast, y'all's school goes through June, but ours ends really early. So anyway, all right, my friends, I hope you are having a lovely week. If you are sharing my weather and have spring and everything in bloom, go outside, soak up all that color inspiration, and go get knitting. I will see you next week. Bye.